Hey guys, my name is Shubham Kejriwal and today I want to talk to you about housing here in Singapore. So, I've been living in the city for over a year now. I'm a PhD student here at the National University. So, before that, I was living on campus, but since last year, since they kicked me out, I have to live on my own in the city, and in the process of finding a place for myself, which is what this place is, I've realized a lot of things about the housing market in Singapore, how inflated the prices are, for example, and how to find a decent place with some basic standards without necessarily paying a premium. So I'm going to try and highlight some of the important things that have worked out for me, and some things that I would always keep in mind while looking out for housing here in Singapore. If you have any other questions that I may not have answered in this particular video, feel free to use the comment section and let me know. So with that very quick intro, let's get started and talk about housing in Singapore, especially for students. So I'm going to start off by quickly talking about the different offerings available here in Singapore in terms of housing. All of them may not be suitable for students, for example, but it's still good to have sort of an idea about the housing market. The most common type of housing that you'll see here in Singapore are going to be called HDBs, which basically stands for the Housing Development Board, which makes these offerings. It's a government entity, and these housings are generally on the lower end of the rental prices because these are more community housing, and they have the most basic amenities that you can ask for. There's no gymnasium or swimming pools, etc., that you do get in some more luxurious offers like the condominiums, but at the same time that means that they do not cost as much. The next ones, of course, are the condominiums that I talked about, or condo for short. These come with a slightly higher level of amenities. For example, you'll generally have a gymnasium and or a swimming pool. Most of the fancy condominiums also have something like a lawn tennis court, maybe badminton courts, etc. as well. Condominiums are generally private offerings, which also means that most of these condominium complexes are gated. You cannot just enter it, whereas in an HDB you can. So that's like a basic difference between the two. The third type of housing that you can find here in Singapore are landed properties. So you're not living in an apartment complex altogether. You're living in your own place with your own maybe backyard or something. But I haven't explored landed properties a lot. I'm a student on PhD stipend. You'll probably not explore that a lot either, unless you are super rich or something. Maybe let's come back to condominiums and HDBs, which are going to be the focus of this video. One important category that I forgot to talk about completely are on-campus housing on the university. So I got to stay on campus in NUS for about 1.5 years. So I didn't even have to worry about housing for the first 1.5 years. So you generally have shared washrooms, although PGP, the Prince George's Park Residences here in NUS, does offer you en-suite apartments. The cheaper options generally have shared washrooms, maybe an aircon in your small 80 square feet room or something. So all other utilities are shared. I can make a whole nother video talking about on-campus housing, but I think for the benefit of this video, I'm going to focus on living out in the city of Singapore, because I think that's where most of the surprises lies, at least for me, lied, and something that I want to focus more in preparing my audience for. So HDBs generally you can get for around 1,000 to 1,200 Singapore dollars a month, depending on some standards that I will be talking about in a second. Condominiums are generally more expensive. If you're living out in a basic condo with maybe like just a swimming pool or just a gymnasium, or maybe neither, so it's like an upgraded HDB or something, in those scenarios you might still be able to find these places for around the same range, but generally they tend to be like 20-30% more expensive. So in Singapore, when you're looking out for properties, there's another interesting thing that you might come across, and that's called the lease term. Most of the properties here in Singapore go out on 99 years or 999-year leases. That basically means that the house owner himself or herself can only own the house for 99 years or 999 years or so on, and then they have to give it back to the government. These are generally true for HDBs. Condominiums, not so much. They have a concept called freehold, so the owner gets to hold it forever. Alright, so before getting into things that you must keep in mind while looking for a house rental, let me talk to you about where exactly can you find these places. I'm gonna shift you over here for that. I'm too lazy to actually record my screen, so this has to do. Anyway, the point is I'm going to open up Property Guru here, which is one of the websites I recommend. And Property Guru, in my opinion, is the one-stop shop if you want to rent properties here in Singapore. You just go here. I hope you can see my screen. This is the rent button over here, and then you can search with different criterias, filters, what type of properties you want, condo, landed or HDBs, whether you want just verified listings or not, and your minimum or maximum prices, stuff like that. One thing particularly about Property Guru that has worked really well for me, so you see there's this thing called listed on. If you click on it, it gives you the option to pick whether you want to show listings which are only listed within 3 days, 1 week, etc. Usually when I'm looking out for properties, I just go for within 3 days. What this does essentially is already root out all the properties which are lying around on the website for a very long period of time, and for those type of properties there's generally something wrong, because why is it on the website for so long? It's like being on a dating website, right? Like if you're on it for too long, there's probably something wrong with you. So yeah, that's one particular filter that is very helpful. Regardless of what other filters you put in, I think that is one filter you should definitely try out, and you might end up finding a property very quickly. In fact, when I was looking for this place where I am at right now, I applied that filter while searching, and without it I had looked for months and I couldn't find a place. Another website that I want to recommend to you is called 99.com. It's very similar in its basic layout to Property Guru, I would say. Oh, it's 99.co. My bad, I went to the wrong website. Wow, almost got scammed. Anyway, this is the website. Again, you can go to the rent option, search for places, and then put in a lot of filters here as well. Very similar filters. You can also search for date of availability, for example, like how much time do you need before you can move into your new place. What I did find is that 99.co has slightly better filters compared to Property Guru, but in terms of the quality of the offerings and the advertisements, I think Property Guru is still slightly better. A third thing that usually people do is go to Facebook. So you can look through it, maybe find something that suits you well. I know people who have found properties through Facebook Marketplace, but I personally have never come across an advertisement which stood out to me. Facebook also does not give you a lot of options to add filters and stuff. You can search even for properties in the Indian NUS group or something on Facebook, and then you'll find specifically people to rent out a place with, who are working in NUS, who are from an Indian community, if you're into that kind of thing. So that's another option, but my general recommendation, Property Guru. Number 2 is 99.com. .co. Don't go to 99.com. Apparently that's a scam. Alright, so that was it for the part 2 of this video. And now we move on to the final part, for which I have to shift you guys again. I don't know if this new frame is better or worse than the last one, but this is what you're stuck with for the final part of this video, in which I want to talk to you about things that you should keep in mind while looking out for properties here in Singapore. So it's not as straightforward as you just go out, look for a place, contact the landlord or the agent and book a property. The properties can vary a lot in what they demand of you. Sometimes they're so specific as to say that you must be a Chinese lady working in a particular industry or something. That's how specific they can get. You have to sort of skim through a lot of these advertisements which are very specific and particularly ask for tenants of a particular ethnicity. Another thing that you have to deal with is the owner actually staying at the property, something that I'm personally not very okay with. I would want to live in a place which is co-living, so other tenants living in the place, but not necessarily the owner, because they can be a little bit too grumpy at times, is what I've heard. Look out for places which specifically say, for example, that no owner is staying, etc. Another very important thing that you should look out for, especially if you are an international student who plans to cook by themselves or have dietary restrictions like me and cannot eat outside every day, I would recommend looking out for tags which specifically mention whether cooking is allowed or not. Yes, even if the place is co-living, generally cooking may not be allowed in the place, or they say something like light cooking, which basically means you can only only boil noodles and stuff. So make sure that you talk to the agent and be very clear. Another very important distinction is common room versus a master bedroom. As I said, there are options even in university hostels to live in an ensuite apartment, which are basically master bedrooms. And what that essentially means is that you have your room and you have an attached personal bathroom with it. That's called a master bedroom. But in a hostel setting, the bathroom is generally cut out of the main room. When you talk about a master bedroom in the context of the city, it's generally a proper room with a proper attached bathroom. But of course, that also means that the prices will be slightly high. Another option is common rooms, in which you have a room only to yourself and you're sharing a bathroom with someone else. Right now, what I'm living in is a common bedroom and I share my bathroom with one another guy, which is not too bad. Alright, so some more technical details. How much deposit do you have to pay? If any, of course, you do have to pay a deposit, which basically means a security deposit towards the well-being of the house. Most of the lease agreements would be about 1 year long, which would require you to pay 1 month's deposit. If you make a lease agreement for 2 years, for example, I think it's standard to pay 2 months deposit instead. Oh, also, that reminds me, when they make these lease agreements, do look out for an option to have an exit before the end of your lease. For example, there can be an option that after 6 months of you living there, you can give a 1 month notice and exit from the rental agreement without losing your deposit. It's always good to have that sort of freedom. Maybe not all landlords and not all agents will particularly like it, but try to push for it if you can. There are smaller one-time fees. For example, you have to pay a stamping duty, which is calculated as a weird equation, but it roughly boils down to about 50 to 60 Singapore dollars. It's a one-time payment towards signing of the lease agreement. Another thing to keep in mind is that the utilities of the house are generally paid extra. In the place I'm living in right now, the utilities come down to around 50 to 60 Singapore dollars every month. And for my friends who are also living out in the city, I think it's generally around the same amount. So if you do not have some very extravagant electricity consumption habits, I think this should be your norm. Of course, this also depends on the habits of the other tenants sharing this house with you. Keep an eye out on these red flags in the first few months, and that's also why it's important to have an exit clause. For example, if in the first 2 months, if the utility bill was only 60, but then it shoots up to 100 or 120 in the next few months, then you always have an option to sort of exit. And then one final quick thing that I want to talk about here in this video is when should you look out for housing. So the kind of person I am, I would want to look out for housing as early as I can. Maybe even 2 months in advance, 3 months in advance, I start looking for a place. But that's usually very annoying for some reason for the landlord and the agents that I have talked to. They expect me to move in immediately or within 1 month of me contacting them. I feel it's a bit unreasonable, but that's apparently the norm here in Singapore. So in case you're looking to change places, or in case you want to come to Singapore, it's better that you start looking out for housing maybe in the 1 month to 1.5 month span. And there you have it, a very short video about what to keep in mind when you're looking out for properties here in Singapore. I have definitely missed out on a lot of stuff. I'm recording this at 10:30 in the evening just because I wanted to and I didn't have anything better to do, and I was sort of procrastinating on making this video for a really long time. But I would appreciate it if you leave a like on this video if this was in some way helpful. I would also appreciate if you have any questions and you want to talk to me more about them, either here in the comment section or maybe on the socials that I have linked to in my description and on my YouTube channel. So feel free to reach out to me. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this and got some better idea about housing here in Singapore. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.